Hey everyone, I want to start this video by sharing a bit about myself. I moved to Canada as a permanent resident in January of 2022. Like many newcomers, I came here with big dreams, expecting stable income and a chance to build a better life. But reality hits hard. Income levels have barely moved, but inflation keeps rising. The cost of living higher than ever. And with now the US imposing tariffs, things could get worse. But here's the thing, I think Canada can make a comeback. I have been following the big geopolitical shifts between Canada, US, EU, China, and I could see a pattern. It's a way that Canada can regain its lost glory. So stay with me in this video and I'll show you exactly why I think that Canada has a shot at turning things around and what we need to do next. So let's start. It was in 2012 when Justin Trudeau, the son of the legendary Elliot Trudeau, rose to popularity by winning a charity boxing match against a conservative leader who was actually a black belt in karate. The popularity reached to such an extent that in 2013, Justin Trudeau was elected as the leader of the troubled Liberal Party, and finally in 2015 he was elected as the Prime Minister of Canada. So a new leader was emerged in Canada who was young and charismatic.
Canadians from all across this great country sent a clear message tonight. It's time for a change in this country, my friends.
So Trudeau was a self-declared feminist, climate champion, and a global darling of liberal politics. With a gender-balanced cabinet, a promise to welcome refugees, and an ambitious social agenda, Trudeau became a progressive icon on the world stage. But soon, cracks began to show. Ethical scandals, lavish vacations, and unfulfilled promises. He backed out of electoral reforms and struggled to balance bold policies with real-world governance. If you noticed, he even mentioned this regret in his resignation speech.
If I have one regret, particularly as we approach this election, well, there are probably many regrets that I will think of. But I do wish that we'd been able to change the way we elect our governments in this country.
Despite some major wins like reducing child poverty and launching a national child care program, Canadians started to lose faith on Trudeau eventually. Things started to become more evident when in 2019 elections Trudeau's Liberal Party was reduced to an unstable minority. Then came COVID-19, which was kind of a final nail on the coffin. COVID-19 rose inflation to an unprecedented levels. Here the government mistook by spending record level subsidies to address the job losses and the economic downturn. Inflation adjusted spending in 2024 as per the reports was somewhere around $11,856, which was 10.2% higher than the 2007 and 9 financial crisis and 28.7% higher than the peak spending during World War II. The historic record level of spending burdened the government with budget deficits for 10 consecutive years from 2014 to 2024. I would say that a turning point for Canada was the re-election of Donald Trump as the President of USA. With Donald Trump's election, tariff threats loomed over Canada's exports to USA. But that wasn't the worst part. Trump took it further, mocking Canada, calling Trudeau a governor and not a prime minister, and even joking that Canada should just become the 51st state of the United States of America.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens, but it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now.
For most of the Canadians, this wasn't just an insult. It was kind of a national humiliation. I would say this was a blessing in disguise and a moment which made the sentiments of the whole nation united. It made the government reconsider its policies and procedures, trade ties, and the economic outlook. See, if you ask me, this is the most possible case that Canada will take a decade or at least half a decade to turn things around. But there are some things happening in the world that are acting in favor of the Canadian people. While Canada is struggling to regain its footing and its voice in the world, something unexpected is happening in Europe. In addition to meddling with Canada, Donald Trump has also shaken Europe. And now Canada and Europe are coming in a way that could change everything. To understand this, we need to go a little back in time. After World War II, the Europe was in constant threat from the then Soviet Union. The US stepped in to restore peace, security, and order. It sent tens of thousands of troops to secure Western Europe, which was adjacent to the Soviet Union. This also led to the creation of NATO in 1949, a military alliance which was meant to protect Europe and North America from external threats, mainly Soviet Union of those times. Canada emerged not just a member of NATO, it was a key architect of the military alliance. In fact, it was a Canadian, Mr. Lester B. Pearson, the former Prime Minister of Canada, who drafted the policies and shaped the vision of NATO. For decades, NATO has remained a pillar of Western security. But now the dynamics are changing there also, after the Trump government came to power. Donald Trump is threatening to pull the US out of NATO because he believes that the US is spending too much on Europe's defense. At the same time, Germany, which is a powerful country in the Europe, faced interventions in its recent elections from USA, especially Elon Musk. Recently, Elon Musk got involved in the Germany's elections by supporting the far-right Alternative for Germany party. He used the social media site X, formerly known as Twitter, held discussions with their leaders, and even appeared in videos endorsing them.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Although AFD managed to take 20% of the vote in the recent elections, they failed to take control of Germany. Instead, Germany formed a coalition government led by Friedrich Merz of the Conservative Party. In response to US and Elon Musk's interventions in the elections, Merz vowed to make Europe free of USA and suggested the continent must think of a replacement of NATO.
My absolute priority will be to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible, so that step by step we can really achieve independence from the United States.
All these events, from US threat to exit from the NATO, from the threat of USA to withdraw troops from Europe, and the recent interventions in the German elections, have turned Europe against the USA. As the EU and the corresponding European Union looked for new allies, it turned to an old friend, which is Canada. Now, Canada and EU are strengthening their trade ties. The two bodies are working together in several key areas, from joint weapons production, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, oil and gas, and let's see what's more. All these deals, if they get consummated, can diversify Canadian international trade and get the Canadian exports independent of the USA. If you ask me, two economic sleeping giants, Canada and Europe, are coming together and the world order is shifting. Sometimes a crisis is the best wake-up call, and for Canada, that wake-up call came from an unexpected place of Mr. Donald Trump. As painful as it is right now, Canadians may thank Mr. Donald Trump in the future. Why? Because for too long, Canada has been so complacent. Canada had everything to become a global powerhouse, yet it became over-dependent on the USA. In the year 2023, Canada exported 70% of overall goods and 90% of oil to the USA. But now Canada is rethinking its global trade strategy and thinking of diversification in trade, apart from thinking of developing trade ties with the EU countries. Canada is also thinking and has already developed some trade ties with China. For the first time, Canada is expanding its oil exports to China and other global Asian markets. Canada even expanded one of its major pipeline projects, the Trans Mountain Pipeline project, which enabled Canada to extract 3 times of crude oil. And thanks to the situation, Canada is also rethinking of reviving other dormant pipeline projects similar to the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And it's not just oil. Canada's minerals, especially lithium and rare earth metals, are high in demand in the renewable energy and electric vehicle space across the globe. Canada has what the world needs, and for the first time we are in a position and mindset to profit from it. If you notice, Canada has one of the largest coastlines in the world. This coastline gives us the ability to open new trade routes to Asia, Europe, and beyond. So Canada has made its move by reducing its reliance to the US and opening doors to new global trade partners. But let's face it, oil and trade alone won't be enough to reclaim Canada's lost economic power, because Canada has deeper structural problems that keep the Canadians holding back. And if we don't fix them, all our resources, potential, and talent will go in vain. For years, I would say Canada has lacked a bold government and leadership with a long-term vision. While other nations like China planned for decades ahead, Canada chose a reactive approach instead of proactively planning for crisis. Starting a business in Canada, you have a good luck. The strict policies and regulations in Canada make it harder to innovate and expand for businesses in Canada. Entrepreneurs should look elsewhere rather than thinking of doing business in Canada. And here's a shocker. It is easier to trade internationally than it is to trade internally in Canada. Different provincial laws often block businesses to sell internally in Canada, often hurting the economy. Even a study from McDonald Laurier Institute depicts that eliminating trade barriers could add up to $200 billion per year to the Canadian economy. Endless bureaucracy and red tapes strangle the businesses in Canada. And more to it, Canadian businesses pay some of the most highest taxes in the world. And hence investors rush to US, Europe and Australia. It seems that policymakers and the government have started to realize this and are eager to fix these issues. So if you believe in Canada's comeback, share this video and drop a comment.